There's a will, there's a way, there's a way, there's a way.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your host Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Gillia. You want to hunt elk? They live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Welcome everybody to part 2 of Solo with Coach, developing your elk hunting game plan. So the whole goal of this series is to begin helping you with a game plan for your upcoming archery elk season. And again, when I'm talking about a game plan, I'm not talking about what state, what tags or draw strategy, what dates or what moon phase. I'm talking about helping you to develop your offensive and defensive strategies that you'll be using in the field no matter where you hunt this archery season. So the last time we talked mostly about offense, and even though I'm not done there, and I'll get back to that, I want today to start with some of the defensive side of things. So remember this, when we're talking about defense, we're talking about acting and reacting decisively to your opponents and defending against unforeseen moments, breakdowns in strategy and preparation that could magnify your weaknesses and then prevent you from a win. And when I talked about defense, I talked about 3 goals, with the first one being identifying and eliminating your own weaknesses or possible failure points. Secondly was know how to read the field and adjust to the situation. And last was to be able to act and react decisively to your opponent's actions. So for today, especially because since we're in season prep, this is the time that these are things that you can start on now, that you can start getting ready, that you can start to make second nature. And this is the time to do it, because starting with the first goal is going to be identifying and eliminating your own weaknesses or possible failure points. By doing that, by being able to identify a lot of those, especially in the areas that we're going to talk about, it's already going to put you in a better situation. Because when you're out in the field, when you're in those situations and things get hot and heavy, there are those things that always come up that end up making you a day late and a dollar short. So the goal is for us to work on identifying those, eliminating those early on, so that it's not something that catches you off guard and could have been a woulda, coulda, shoulda. So let's talk about where those weaknesses and failure points are most likely to come from. You and your gear. You and your skill development, drills and skills. You and your knowledge base, how well you know your opponent and the playing field. You and your situational preparation, preparing for the big plays. In other words, being able to know what to do in that moment, setting up, preparing to close the deal. You and your mental preparation, your ability to stay in the game focused, believing in yourself. Man, I can't tell you how huge that is. Believing in your game plan and believing in your abilities. You and your physical preparation. In other words, your ability to stay in the field and shift gears when it's needed. And basically, it's you when you think about this. Yes, you and your gear, you and your skills, you and your knowledge, but it's you. It is up to you. And it's not always, being able to identify our weaknesses, searching that out, looking ourselves in the mirror, finding those things. If you want to be successful at stuff, you got to be able to pay attention to the details. Everybody's doing all the other things. Everybody's doing the shooting. Everybody's doing, I can tell you, I see a lot of massive physical fitness, right? There are people that are getting in there hiking and stuff like that. There are people that work somewhat on their calling. There's people that do some of these things. there are people that are doing a ton of e-scouting, and they're looking at maps and they're looking at areas, but what they're really not doing is paying attention to the details, to the main tool, the person behind the gear, the person behind the equipment, the person that's having to match wits with that opponent on that playing field. So you have to be the one to really dig in and find these of yourself. Now, what I can do is I can help you just through years of failures, years of experience, things that I've identified, help you to try to point those things out and head those things off at the pass. All right. So one thing that I want to tell you too is when we are dealing with the gear and the skill development, now a lot of these areas are going to cross over into each other because they don't live in isolation. A lot of times when you work on one thing, you're actually working on the other. For example, and what we're going to do is in this session today, I'm going to try to work on 3 of those areas. The first one being you and your gear, okay? There are some failure points or weaknesses that you won't discover until going through situational prep. So when I start talking about you and your gear, I can talk about some of the things that you have to do strictly with gear to identify to help them not be failure points, but I will actually have to pull in situational stuff to put you in that so that you can really prepare for how that gear is going to perform, how you are going to perform, how that weapon is going to perform, how all of these different areas. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break this down into different areas of equipment and gear. And I'm going to talk about those things that I have found to be the things that show up when you least want them to. Okay, so we're going to start first with your bow, all right? The type of things that you need to look for, type of things that you need to prepare for, worn parts. We do this with calls all the time. Guys will work a diaphragm call and they'll buy 1 or 2 diaphragm calls, work it all summer long, and then they take that same call and they take it into the field to only find out that it's blown out, it won't hit the highs, it sounds terrible with the cow calls because it's just flat out worn out, man. They've abused that thing to a point where it's not going to help them. Well, man, we do this a lot of times with the bow. We shoot and shoot and shoot. And how long has it been since you've checked that cable, since you've checked the phrase on that? So you want to take a look and look for those, with the cable being that number 1 worn part. Inspect your grooves, especially on your cams. Make sure that there's no nicks. Make sure there's no areas where that can actually disrupt your cable or find any bending or anything like that. So look for the worn things on there and replace them. Change them out, get them ready for the season, and don't do this like a week before you go out. Do this that month prior. Right? Do this the 2 months prior. I mean, if you've been shooting on your bow for a year, 2 years, and you haven't taken a look at changing cables or the condition of them on there and inspect it, I mean, really inspect your bow and look for those things. If you get those done, even right now, if you get those done right now, now you get behind it, you make sure the bow's tuned, you make sure you have everything lined out, and you are actually ready for season. You're able to shoot it, get to know it, get to be friends with it. And I can't tell you how important that is, man, that your bow, your weapon, becomes an extension of you. It becomes something that just works naturally, that you're able to do things with it, without having to look, without having to think, without having to, take time that necessarily could cost you out in the field. So check for worn parts. The other thing is, in doing that, look for and do noise prevention. So when I'm talking about noise prevention, there's a lot of places that you can do that. Like, for example, you can take a look at your quiver, right? The mounting of your quiver. And on all of your bow in there, you should be checking mounting screws of any kind. You can check how your your stabilizers in, does it have some wax on it? So that I put wax on threads of everything. I don't like to use thread lock, just me. Other people might love to use it. I'd rather use wax on it so that when I screw it, it gets a nice tight seal, and generally that does great. I'll do it for I'll check on mounting screws. I'll check on screws that are mounting anything on my bow, so that I can make sure that, even take a look at some of those screws that are happening inside your cam, some of those things that could possibly get loose inside there and come out. Check everything and make sure that you're tightened up. Noise prevention, I like to bang on my bow in different places and really listen to see what kind of noise I'm getting on the shot. I'm a real noise freak, and today's bows, man, they're just so fast and so strong that that's a lot happening in your hand there. And there can be things that are actually on the bow that are causing additional noise that doesn't have to. Sometimes a big culprit is the arrow rest that smacks down a lot of times, making that whack, type noise inside there. So look around your bow. Is the foam inside your quiver, is it worn? Is it got big gaps in it so that the broadheads are actually loose and rattling inside there? If it is, change it out. There's things that you can do by spraying some additional type foam in there with what you have already and making that work, or just purchase a new replacement for the rubber or the foam that goes inside the head. And when I put one in, I like to add just a little bit of silicone on the top of it and get a little bit of a seal of a seat when I put that in there, so I don't have to worry about that shifting and moving. I'm real big on things not shifting, not moving, not coming loose. I don't want to have that type of worry, and that is a big thing that happens out there. I mean, your bow, when you put it in a side-by-side, or if you have it even in the case on the ATV, or just in the truck, or just in trips anywhere, it gets a lot of vibration, and so a lot of things can come loose. We had a competitor in season two, I believe, of Hunt Wars. It's either 2 or 3. And most incredible, the video these guys got in Hunt Wars on this was just unbelievable. 2 bulls are out in a small park, and they are just going at it. And the hunter was actually too far for the shot, so he starts crawling, arrow knocked, starts crawling, and to do that he's really having to work how he's doing that as he's moving forward, going down. And it is unbelievable footage from, you have the camera back, him in between, with the bulls fighting on the other side, and because of how the focal lengths do, it just looks like he's crawling up on these bulls, but they are just so into each other, and he's crawling up, gets in position to take the shot, and when he goes up to draw, he has no broadhead on the end of his arrow. And that's because of the vibration hitting some grass as it was going, actually spun that broadhead off of his arrow. Just a little bit of bow wax on those threads, tighten that down, and he's got it, that's a whole different ending to the story. Not only would you have the incredible footage of him crawling up, but it would have been incredible footage of him finishing the deal. So that's something that I always want to check. Tuning. Make sure that your bow is tuned. Make sure it's paper tuned. Do all of that so that if you are making any changes, if you're changing anything in your setup, if you're going to heavy arrows, if you're going to, different type of setup in any way, make sure you have everything tuned in line and you're ready to go. Then check those screws again, make sure everything's locked down. All right. One other thing that I always like to do is I always like to measure and mark settings for visual checks. In other words, like if I have my arrow rest, it's usually going out to a certain distance when it goes out. It's at a certain height when it's there. And I like to actually take like I'll get like a white marking pen, or we even used to use, some of the stuff that you would use for correction, like correction fluid, those correction fluid pens, and kind of mark things with that a little bit, just with a little white dot, so that I could visually check and see if there's been any movement in anything. So if you have a sight that's at a certain level, or anything that's attached to your bow in a certain way, you can even do it with like your stabilizers if you keep it on all the time. Like I don't keep long stabilizers, just me. I just don't like a lot of stuff on my bow. So I use a very short stabilizer, and just by putting a straight line, white line across from my stabilizer to the mount where it's at, I can just look at it and know if it's loose or if it's turned or anything like that. So I like to kind of mark things for visual inspection, and I'll actually get a measurement, like take something where I can get a measurement. I can either do it with a arrow T-square, or I can do it just with a string where I can have a point where I know that it's marked to go from cam to cam, and I'm able to check different places on my bow to make sure things, my knocking point or make sure that nothing has shifted or moved on my string. For me, I am a finger shooter, have been a finger shooter that shot instinctively. So knowing where my knocking point was for me was something that was critical. So I always had it marked on a T-square, and I kept that in camp so that I could check it if I thought there was anything going wrong there, or if something happened and I had to replace it and put a new one on there, it was something that I could do very, very quick and didn't have to worry about it. So those are just some of the things on your bow and on your quiver. Your arrows. Now, I will tell you this, if you've listened to us and you've listened to Luis Gonzalez, you know that not only is he big on paper tuning, his bow and his arrows, but he's really big on nock tuning them as well. And I've seen that when he's done nock tuning, and he does this for me. I've had it done on my arrows for the last couple of years. I've never been anybody to nock tune. It's just as an instinctive shooter, I just didn't, as a release shooter, maybe as a target shooter, competitive shooter, absolutely. But it wasn't something that I really wanted to do, right? But you can absolutely do that. And what I have seen with his arrows is that he's been able to change to any broadhead and have those puppies shoot the same every time, as long as the broadhead was the same grain. So that's something for you to think about. The other thing is, make sure you shoot your broadheads. If you're somebody that you're shooting field points all the time, absolutely need to shoot your broadheads to see how much they are flying like your field points. I actually like to do that. I like to shoot a broadhead and then shoot a field point. Don't do it the other way. Don't shoot a field point and then shoot a broadhead, because you'll end up losing some fletchings that way. All right, especially if you got good tight groups. So I always like to shoot the broadhead, then shoot the field point, and that'll really give me a good gauge on how they are flying. And I do it at different distances as well, so I can get a look at that. All right, and I'll tell you, this was something that I've always done, and I had somebody that questioned it one time and really kind of shook my head when they questioned, because it was something I've always done my whole life. I always glue my nocks. Once I have them where they're going to be, I want them glued. I do not want to be in a situation where for any reason I go to draw back and I end up with a knot getting pulled out of my arrow, and it happens. right? I've seen it happen. So I always glue my nocks, and I always wax thread my broadheads when I put them on. Okay, so that's covering the bow and the arrows, just some of the possible failure points there. Now, I'm going to talk about some other gear, and I'm going to start with packs. So I think with the pack or packs, whatever you're going to use, and I'm going to kind of have a, I train guys in hunt wars. I train hunters all the time, and even if we're doing a base camp situation or a spike camp situation where we're just not really going out that far, I just see so many people today carrying really, like they're carrying large backpacks with a lot of gear in them. And myself, that's just not me. I'm more of a day pack person. I have stuff in it that I need for survival in case. I have my first aid kit. I have different things that, if I need to get water and different things like that. I have all my lights. I have all my munchies. But, and I've slept out in the woods a lot of times without having the full thing. I actually carry a very, very light, probably, I don't know, 3 ounces, 4 ounces of a hammock in my pack. If I want to get up off the ground, I can do that. And just depends on, what kind of cool night we have and stuff like that as to whether I do that. Now, if I am living out of my pack, right, and I'm going to an area where I'm going to set up a camp, I even carry a day pack in my large pack so that I can switch that out. I really like I feel more liberated. I feel more free, more in a day pack than having something of large form factor. Now, if you have something that you can really strap down and you keep that form factor small behind you and you're able to bend and do the things and draw without a lot of noise, then fine. And especially, if you're going to go long distances. But for me, and because we generally hunt in packs, and what I mean by that is we usually have a crew. We usually have 4 to 6 people that we're hunting with. We always have, we can call the posse to come in and help out to pack something out. If you're solo, totally different story. You got to be ready for that, right? So there's different aspects and different variables to the reason why you're going to use the pack that you are. But whatever pack you use, know your pack. Know how to adjust it. I see a lot of people that are trying to adjust a pack on the fly. Like they're in the woods and they got weight in it and something just doesn't feel right. And they're trying to learn how to adjust that. Or they get an animal down and now they're trying to learn how to do a load. Know your pack. Know how to adjust it. All right? Know the form factor of it. And here's the one thing I'm going to ask you too, because I have buddies and it's always fun. I can remember one time on one hunt, I was hunting with Luis for the first time, and we had taken a break, and Luis was over here, his pack was over here, so I went to go grab his pack to hand it to him. I was like, oh my God, man. I was like, what are you carrying that thing? A dead man? It was just so heavy. And he started going through all this stuff. And, by day 3 of us hunting, he realized, well, he didn't need this and he didn't need that and he didn't need this. And so, really, scrutinize the stuff that you're packing in your pack. Is that like something that was a really cool gimmick that, it would be awesome to use one day? Or is this something that you're actually going to need? So do that. Now, I'll tell you, again, you've heard me when I talked about the bows that I'm a noise freak. So one of the things that really I'm always checking on my packs are the noise factor. How much noise does that material make? I don't care what it is. Anytime I'm going into the woods, if it's my camo, I'm always checking to see what that sounds like. I just run my fingers. If I hear that swish swish noise, then it bothers me. It drives me nuts. And most packs, there's some packs today that are just really noisy. If any branches hit it, you get that that happens there, and it's hard to get away from that with a lot of packs, especially if you're having to put any kind of pack cover on it for weather. Now, if it's a weather issue, that's not the big deal, because everything's wet, everything's damp. It's just the way it is. But you're going to get that weather pack off of it. Now, and if you can keep it down tight enough, or the form factor is close enough on your back or behind your back, so that when you're walking through, that your body, if you're getting your body through, your pack's getting through without making any noise. Just think about those types of things, because a lot of times I see a lot of hunters that when they're going through the woods, they're really looking and they're listening, but they're not really paying attention to their own noise, that the noise that they're making when they're moving through. In a lot of ways, I mean, are there pant legs, really gathered together and making that as they're walking through there? I try to keep everything as tight and as quiet as possible. Okay, so on your pack, when you start talking about noise factor, are there any loose straps? Anything that can make a racket, that can hit something that at the wrong time. Especially, how does your pack sound on the draw? And there's ways to fix that, just by having a test strap, having it cinched just right so that it's really not out on the shoulders, and then when you go to draw, you're not getting any kind of noise there. But I really work at having my pack quiet, on the draw. And I've actually, I've seen some people that have, and I've done it myself, where you can sew fleece overguards, that'll just kind of wrap on your pack straps so that it quiets them down and they don't make any kind of noise when you draw. There's lots of ways that you can do that. And the reason that's so critical is, you think about it, man. You've had an animal that's responded to you, and you responded by moving in. You're getting in, you get a setup. That animal's coming in. He's at 30 yards, he's at 20 yards. Next thing you know, he's at 12 yards, and it seems like you can hear a mouse pee on cotton, man. It seems like you can hear your own heart coming out your mouth. And I mean to tell you, there's times that I thought, oh, there's no way that animal can't hear my breath going, because I could literally feel my heart coming out my mouth like that. And then you go to draw at that distance, and it's that shh as you go to draw, either from your pack or from your arrow going across your arrow rest. That's another area that's true. I want that as silent and as smooth as possible. I want to be able to draw straight back, and I want that arrow just like as silent as possible when I draw back. I want the movement straight back, and I want it as quiet as possible. So, think about your pack. Think about especially these shoulder straps. Is there anything else that gathers and makes noise when you do that? The fit, the buckles, the weight, how much weight you're carrying, is it that necessary? So, how does it feel when you carry weight? Don't wait until you actually have it on there to find out if something's going to break down. We had a buddy of mine that killed a bull, his first bull, and he killed the bull at about 11,000 feet. He had some issue with altitude sickness, and then when we tried loading actual weight on his pack that was designed to be able to have a meat shelf on it, when everything started to go in, the pack itself snapped in an area where the buckles were going to go in, and now he was stuck, without trying to, he had a defective pack, basically, which made things a lot more difficult. Hydration systems. Think about that. Hydration system. Where is it coming out? Where is that hose at? is that hose, because they have a tendency sometimes to have their own life, they have their own memory, and sometimes the tube and like your mouthpiece sometimes can kind of stick out where there's a good possibility as you shoot it could catch your string and throw everything off. So think about that. I know a lot of times I actually take mine, fold it underneath, and so that it's underneath my strap and it kind of goes back there. So pay attention to those things. All right. Another huge thing with your pack is to have a placement system. All right. Know where your extra release is. I mean, in that placement system, you should know that this area is for this location is for this. You should be able to find that in the dark just by taking your pack off, having your pack towards you so that the flat part, the body part is towards you and it's going to the back. You should be able to know exactly which pocket, which side, how deep, what area that you need to find things. And that could really come in important if something or some kind of emergency was to happen and you had to send somebody to your pack to get something fast, and you tell them, right side, left bottom, orange bag, right? There's different things that you can do to make sure that you know where everything is, where your tag and license is, because now it's like that visual check with your bow. You're not having to guess whether or not. You open up, yep, tag, license there, extra release there, flashlight there, windicator there, first aid kit, check. You know exactly where everything is and you know how to access it, all right? Bino packs. Now, you can compare a lot of this stuff to the bino packs. I'm not a big bino pack person because I really... where I hunt, we don't really, glassing is difficult. We just don't have, if you're in glassing country, more power to you. And if that's something that you like to do, for me, I'm not much. In some areas we do some glassing, or when I'm going through the woods and I see something, sometimes I'll look, but I keep a pair of compacts with me that drop right into a little pocket that are just, they're perfect. They're like 8x10s. I can look, I can decipher, I can figure all that out without having something on my chest. I just don't like anything on my chest. I don't want anything that could in any way catch a string or be a problem. And I know some people use it as, again, that spot that they know where everything is, right? Cool. And they're even great. And I will tell you, as a guide, I do use them. It's just as a bow hunter myself, I don't. And it's like I said, because I don't use binos that much, and because really I don't like being in a situation where it takes me any extra time to peel a layer, because I think that's another thing. I don't like to sweat. I hate to be all sweated up, sweat my clothes up, because I don't want to be in a situation where when I do stop, or if I stop, I'm going to start getting cold because of the sweat that I have. And so I like to peel, man. And I'll, like, if I'm going out in the morning, and here's a little secret to that. However many layers you have on, because that's what you need to get warm in the morning before you go hunting, before you go out, peel one, dump it. Either put it on your pack, in your pack, but take it off, because that's one layer too many already. And what's going to happen as soon as you start getting work under your belt, moving, your body's going to heat up, and then you're going to be just right, and then even maybe need to start unzipping or take off a layer. And I like to be in a situation when I'm hunting, especially if, and generally when I'm overheat, is if I'm responding to an animal and I'm having to make a move, and I'm having to close the distance, and I'm having to close it like right now. Well, I don't want to, if I'm starting to overheat, and I don't want to be in a situation where I'm overheating. It's just how I am, man. I want everything so I can rock and roll and not be sweating. And I'll just stop, pop, pull everything off, put it in the pack, throw it back on my way again. All right. I don't want to have to take off my bino. And what I find is when I have something on my chest, it makes me overheat faster. when I have something there. It's harder for me to unzip, to let air in. That's going to give me that little bit before I even have to peel. But again, just me. I'm just sharing. Yeah. And look, y'all, look, everybody has a way. Everybody has a form factor. Everybody has things that they're comfortable doing. This is just my way. If whatever works for you works, stay with it if that works for you. But this is just me from years and years of doing things. So I'm just sharing that with you. Okay. So bino packs, your pack and your bino packs. Like I said, a lot of things they cross over, like situational things. So if you're going to wear a pack hunting, then you need to wear it and shoot in it. You need to wear it and hike in it. If you're going to wear a pack and a bino pack while you're hunting, you need to do the same thing. Throw it on, go out, you need to shoot in it. You need to shoot from down on your knees. You need to shoot from squatting. You need to shoot standing up. You need to do all those different things with that gear on so that you can know how it's going to perform in situations, all right? What does it sound like? How does it move? All right? Does it restrict? Does it catch? Is there any possible failure point that you need to fix or get rid of? Okay? All right. A huge one, man. Especially if you hunt early September, there's a good chance the mornings are below freezing. So a lot of times I don't like to wear thick gloves. I will wear thin gloves on my hand. I like things that are real thin. In fact, a lot of times I will actually cut out at the knuckle these first 3 fingers. I'll make sure that the glove and everything, the pinky and the thumb are covered, but I'll actually cut out those 3 fingers. Because if they start to get cold, I can actually take them in like that and my hands stay warm. And I do that on my shooting hand. So for me, if I'm shooting instinctively with a glove, I will actually put my shooting glove on, stick it through those holes, and then those will actually kind of be down here around this knuckle right there, because then those 3 fingers will be covered in leather. If I'm shooting with a release, I just want them up high on the knuckles right there so that I trim that, so that I get a lot of the same feel when I'm doing things, especially like with the finger and stuff like that. And another thing, like for me, it used to be that my hands would get a lot colder having to carry my bow. Either you have to carry it by the string, or if you tried carrying it by the handle or anything like that, you got that little bit of cold going on. But ever since that I've gone to a bow hitch carrying system, it's changed the game for me. I just don't have to worry about that same thing. I'm actually able to take and put my hands in a pocket, both hands like that, instead of having one out and then having to switch them up like that. But if you're going to use gloves, you need to do that while you shoot so that you can, it feels so different on the bow. It just, even on the bow hand, feels different, and you just want to get used to how that feel and shoot in it so that you're ready for it, man. If that's what you're going to do, be ready for it. If you're going to pull one off. Now, and I'll tell you another reason that I like thin gloves on my hands and why I actually like to let a couple fingers out is that our hands are something that we move more than anything. We're scratching, moving, reaching, doing that. And that light color becomes a flash of movement out in the woods. So I really like thin gloves on my hands. I'll try to keep them on my hands as much as possible. I don't care if they're cotton. I don't care what they are. I just want something thin and camoed on my hands, maybe with my fingertips out, but I don't want my hands flashing like that. It's kind of like our face. Our face can be a big flash out there too. So that's why I like either like a spandaflage type net or a gator that I can pull up, something like that. All right. I know a lot of guys use paint on their face, and different things. And for me, it's like I have really large pores, man. So if I do that, it'll take me 3 weeks to get that stuff out. So I really like spandaflage head nets. They even make them so that they're, that they're half spandaflage, so you can put a cap on and off, and you can actually pull it down almost like a neck thing. So and they really are great for letting you hear. They're a little bit warm when it's cold, but yet they're cool when it's hot, so that's a pretty cool thing. And it's called spandaflage. It's not always that easy to find anymore. You have to really, really look for it. Okay. I will even, like, if it's really hot and hot season, I've got some spandaflage sleeves that I can wear. So I can wear a t-shirt and then I can put those spandaflage sleeves on so that my arms are a little bit more camouflaged as well. Okay. The release, the feel and use of that with gloves. And if you're using any kind of glove, and like Gilbert does not like to use gloves. He would rather have no glove on his shooting hand to make sure that he can feel his release. And for me, I would actually, just like I said, cut out the knuckle so that I can feel that. Or I cut out right here at the, the first knuckle from the top there. And, from this knuckle down, it would be my first knuckle. I would trim it right there, and that way I can actually curl around and feel that as well, depending on what kind of release you're using, right? If you're doing a thumb release, you're going to have to figure out how that feels for you, okay? All right. And speaking of release, that's a big one, man. If you are a release shooter and something happens to that release, you're screwed. So check it for worn parts, check it for loose screws. Be prepared with a spare in case you lose that puppy, because if it's gone and you lose it, you're up the creek. So always have a spare identical to what you're using, and that you shoot with that as often as you shoot with the other one. Just switch them off, right? So that you know that you're comfortable with both of them, that both of them are operating, they feel the same, you're good to go. And if you lose one and you go to the other one, you don't have to worry about a different feel or a different change, okay? All right, and same thing with anything that has a possible screw with it. Remember, just a little bit of bow wax on the threads and screw it in, and you get a whole lot tighter seal, okay? Face masks and neck gaiters. To me, that has like the same thing as like a glove. And most of the time we're shooting and we're getting our anchor point without that face mask on, and we get used to that feel. All right. And so neck gaiters you can pull up, or if you have a face mask that's on, that's like a full mask or half mask or anything, you've got to shoot with it. And so if you're hearing everything that I'm saying pack, binopack, gloves, right? Face mask, you have to perform in the stuff that you're going to use. You have to practice like you're going to play. You don't want any surprises when you're out there. So face masks, how does that anchor feel? What does it feel like? Make sure that you're shooting with that face mask on. How does that feel different? What do you on your face use that you're locking in no matter what you have on there, and how does it work? And I'll tell you, if you wear glasses, because I know this, like whenever I do use like a neck gaiter and I bring it over my nose and I'm wearing any kind of, clear glasses and for a four-wheel or anything like that, man, just breathing fogs everything up. I actually know the best way to put those glasses or to put that mask so I don't have to worry about that, because I don't want it fogging up at the wrong time. Could you imagine that happening when you're going to shoot, right? You've got that animal coming in and now everything's fogged up, having trouble seeing through your peep, having trouble seeing your pin. So be ready for that. And I'm sure the glass guys, those guys using glasses have got this figured out way ahead of time of me. So they could probably teach me a thing or two. Camo. Again, big noise thing with me. So anytime I'm going to get camo, I'm always giving it the stroke check on how it sounds. That's one reason I really like fleece. I love the merino. The merino is just so quiet out there, and I love the layer systems on the merino. What I like about my vest, I have a vest that I use, a 2.0 vest that is just my favorite, and in the vest, it keeps my chest warm, and that's just type of layer system that I like. If I'm going to have anything that needs to be warm, it's going to be my chest. Then I have a zip if I need to open it, and my arms are a lot more free. They're going through stuff, not making any noises. When I go to draw, they're not making noises. There's such a liberation. As little as you can keep on your body and still be warm is such a benefit. It's a benefit to not overheating. It's a benefit to not being bound up. It's a benefit to your freedom when you're drawing and moving and things like that. Okay? On your camo though, make sure that you when you're shooting with it, you don't want bulky, loose sleeves. Nothing that can catch on your string. All right, check that out. If you need to do something to gather that, do that. So shoot in stuff that you're actually going to hunt in. And I've seen guys, man, that, well, we got hit. We were on a hunt. We got hit with 6-7 inches. Temperatures dropped like crazy. And all of a sudden, everybody's in thick coats out there. And that, is actually can be a problem. If you're going out there and you get in a situation that you just don't feel the same because you haven't shot in that gear. If you're somebody that is shooting, I know whitetail hunters are always in thicker stuff, so they get used to that. I'm not, right? Because I'm hot by nature, I generally don't have to wear stuff that's that thick, and I try to keep things as thin as possible. Also, make sure that your jacket's not too bulky, if you have one. And like I talked about before, the gathering of the pants down there, especially in the morning, even if they get wet when you're walking, they start to shush a lot. And I don't want to be in a situation where I'm actually stalking in on an animal or trying to move in, and I've got my britches, my legs going by one, and it's going shh. I just don't want that. Okay? All right. So that's covering you and your gear. And you could hear how a lot of that is talking about situational as well. Taking that gear, even though you can make sure that you're checking for warm parts, that you're checking for loose items, that you're eliminating noise, that you're making things quieter, you also have to see how they function. That form functions in actual situational stuff while shooting. It's huge because you have to shoot to kill something. So if something is going to mess up that draw process or that shooting process, that is a huge failure. R.C. Knox had a huge bull in front of him, and he had some compact binos around his neck. Drew back, shot, the string caught the binos, and everything just kind of blew up on him a little bit there, and the arrow didn't go where it was supposed to, all because of just one thing that got in the way and created a failure that kept him from punching his tag. Did everything right up to then. Okay? So, part 2. You and your skill development, drills and skills. All right. So I'll tell you, to me, the most important skill development is going to be your calling and shooting. Now, in my head, there were a lot of things spinning around in there because I also thought another huge skill development is like foot placement. It's also like being able to walk and look up at the same time. And I can't tell you, especially where we hunt with all the volcanic rock, how many times, I've stumbled or tripped because I'm trying to look as I'm walking. And it takes a skill to be able to look down, look up, and make sure that you're placing your feet correctly, or that you're feeling with your feet, correctly. Practicing moving in slowly and placing those feet in a way so that you're able to stalk in on something as quiet as possible. That is a skill to work that can so come in handy. I know I was always like trying to stalk my dog, or trying to stalk my kids, or sneak up on my wife and do different things, all about how I placed my feet. And you'll learn that there's ways that you can place your feet that don't crunch everything. You can put like an outside heel part down first and then kind of roll to it. Or you can go and just do a little bit of a heel and start to place it and slowly shift it down and get that weight on it, so it's actually becoming a rocking type formation like that. Or just stepping on one side of your foot. But you got to be careful with some of that, because you got to have strong ankles. If you do something wrong, you put too much pressure, then it can actually end up making a situation worse. So that's kind of another skill that was kind of rolling through my head. But I think for now, like one of the main skills, and you're going to hear me, I always throw calling in there, right? Because I totally believe that calling is what changes the game. I totally believe that calling creates more opportunities. Calling can be used to make a bad opportunity into a good opportunity. Calling can be used to stop an animal and to get a shot. It can be used after a shot to calm an animal. There's so many factors of calling that change the game. And the better you are at that, the more success you're going to have. So I always put that at the top of my list. Now, when we go back to offense, we're going to talk a lot more about the calling. But here's something that I want to kind of throw out right away, is that I think one thing that you really need to work on in your calling is to work on soft calling. I think a lot of people, when elk start to get in tight, are way too loud with their calls. And I've just been around bulls and cows sometimes. Now, if they're in a big herd, the cows, they're, and they're being verbal, it's loud as heck, man, But when you have bulls coming in and sneaking in sometimes, or they're just trying to locate other elk in an area, they just, it's just a real low type of, light, easy, small, short type mew that they do. And you don't need to be loud. They have radar ears, man, that they can hear with. So you just don't have to be throwing it at them. You don't have to be hitting them. You don't have to be that loud talker that's in the family. You don't have to be Uncle Joe, man. You can quiet that stuff down. And what's funny is, that's actually a technique we learn as teachers, is that sometimes you get so used to teaching a class that you're in this voice and you're in this commanding voice, and it's the same voice all the time, that it kind of is a little loud and everybody almost starts to put you out. They stop listening and they kind of start to drone you out a little bit. But when you lower your voice, when it's hard to hear, you get the attention. It's like all of a sudden they refocus a little bit. And I really think that when those bulls start coming in, and understand, if a bull's going to go silent on you, he can be talking the whole time, and then all of a sudden, 100, 150, or 200 yards out, depending on a lot of variables with terrain, visibility, the vegetation, a lot of those things that are different, they can go quiet at those points, because a lot of times they're coming in to be able to see what they've been hearing. And you really don't, they're already listening, and so it doesn't take a whole lot. You don't have to be loud. You need to make them really try to find you, and I love using my tube and throwing it behind me or in different directions. If I have a bull coming from the right, I actually like to throw those calls off to my left to try to get them to cross in front of me, in front of my face. So I never again, and I've said this, and you'll always hear, I never want them to think that I'm right here. Now, there's times when that happens. There's all kinds of situation and variables, but if I can, I always want to deceive that animal, make them think I'm in another place, and then put them in the position that helps me as a shooter, okay? So work on that soft calling, work on those quiet calls, because it does take a skill set. And I'll tell you this, when I do it, I want to make sure that I have a very light latex, what I call a closer call. So a lot of times, if I have, and I know a bull's coming into me, I'm switching out to a call that I know I can really make that light. It's got that single light latex on it. It just doesn't take much of a hit at all, okay? Or one that I've really got broke in, all right? So that's all I want to say on calling, because the big area that I want to talk about is the shooting as far as the skill development. And I'm not talking about, going in your backyard, standing, shooting how many arrows at 20, how many arrows at 30. And actually, I really think your first arrow should come from your what you think is your effective killing range, right? Or even 10 yards further than that. That should be your first arrow. I think the farther away you shoot, I think it really helps you to focus. So I always like to start from the furthest, being my first arrow, and then kind of move in. So, if that's 60 or if that's 50, whatever it is for you, everybody is always just shooting those distances. They're shooting perfectly standing, parallel with the feet. The feet are great placement, shoulders are great placement. And so you get to be a rock star, in your own backyard. Well, that's not going to help you. It's going to help you to get form down. It's going to help you to know that your pins are right. It's going to help you to know that you can shoot this distance, that distance, and this distance. Okay, it's going to help you there. But what it doesn't do, it doesn't prepare you for situational, and this is where we cross over, okay, where we cross over into situational type situations with your shooting. In other words, now you need to shoot from your knees, both knees down, one knee down and up with 1 foot up, squatting, leaning out. So let's say that you draw with a tree in front of you, and now you have to lean out to be able to take that shot. Now trust me in this. This is something that happens all the time, and this is something that can change your form, that you have to really try to work to stay in form correctly to be able to do that, and recognize that if you're out of form or if you're not, what does it take you to be able to lean out? Do you have to get a foot further out so that you can shift the hips and still keep yourself in a better position? What I mean by shift the hips is if I have my feet back and I just start to lean out, my hips stay behind me. But if I get my foot up a little bit and I shoot and I kind of push with that back foot to get my hips forward, I still kind of keep myself in line. So you really need to practice that leaning out. Shooting through trees, up, down, because those angles, a lot of people have a tendency that if they have to shoot down a hill, that what they'll do is they'll just drop their bow arm. They keep their body straight up and they drop their bow arm. That has completely changed everything for you. You have to keep your T and you have to bend at the waist. Keep your T. This is your T going across here, and bend at the waist. Now you're staying in form. Look at the difference between me being here and me doing this. All right? Totally changes everything if you do that. I like to be in here and I drop down. Okay? Up. Same thing, man. You always keep your T, and then you just bend at that waist. All right, that looks like that Cam Newton type pose, right? Yeah. um, so practice different shooting positions. In fact, one of my favorite things to do is to get a buddy out there, and we like to play horse. Where they get to shoot, pick where we're shooting from. They get to pick how we're shooting, whether we're sitting, whether we're on our knees, whether we're, 1 foot up, whether it's, leaning out from a tree, whether we have to draw behind the tree and step out. We think of all kinds of things to do. And in fact, there's a great story about me and Chav playing horse one time, and Chav is a lot shorter than I am. So we were playing horse. We're using at this time judo points, and so we have a can that's out there in a field, and I got up in a tree to shoot down on it. Got up there, had him hand me my bow, and then I shot at this can that's out in this field with the judo point. Well, so he had to follow suit, but when he got up there, he's shorter than me, and there was a pine tree that I was able to shoot over that was in his way. So I actually stood right under him where he was at the tree, and I grabbed the pine tree and put it here, and his bow is just above me. And the last thing I can remember was thinking, I sure hope he doesn't shoot me in the back of the wham. And man, something smacked me in the head. My head goes down. I go up and I put my hand on top. I come down and I'm bleeding on the top of my head. And I thought Chavez had shot me in the back of the head, dude. And actually, that's when his bow was one of the PSC Novas that had the egg-shaped cams, and as he drew, it came up, the way it does, and then when he let go, it comes down in a chopping motion, and that cam came down and smacked me in the top of the head. So when you're playing horse, be safe. All right, so another skill development in your shooting, and this is huge for me, is judging distances. I think every year, so many opportunities are lost because an animal shows up, and instead of being able to draw and shoot that animal, people are grabbing for rangefinders and having to range them in a hot situation when they don't have the time to do that, and the animal ends up walking off with the rangefinder in your hand. I believe that from 30 yards in, you should be able to know that distance. And I'm telling you, you shouldn't be able to know it. You have to know it. You have to know how to judge and shoot 30 yards in. Practice it. And one of the ways that I practice that is after I go through my regular shooting at things, I like to do what I call tossbacks. So I'll pull my arrows from a target. As I'm walking back away from the target, I just throw arrows. Okay, and then I will go to an arrow, pick it up, look at the target, draw, and shoot. Having to judge that distance, working at judging that distance. And then I'll go up and I'll pass one arrow and go to maybe a forward arrow, pick it up and shoot it, and then come back to the next arrow and really work shooting and judging those distances until you really force yourself to imprint that and to look at it. It's hard for you to build that confidence. And there's some ways, there's some little tricks sometimes depending on your pins and your gaps. Some people actually have, there's gaps in their pins that they can put on a 24-inch bag target, or whatever that is right there, 26 inches. And if certain pins fit on it, they can know at those distances. That's a little gimmick that you can do. For me, I would rather be able to look at it, and I know what 20 yards looks like. And so I know what another 10 yards past that 20 yards looks like. So I'm able to gauge that. And if you can gauge that 30 to 35, that 35 is not going to be much different. All right? Especially if you're aiming 3 inches behind that crease, mid-body, you're going to have yourself 4 inches in each location that you're going to be golden, all right? So it's imperative to practice judging distances. Now, if that animal is past 30 yards, then you're going to a lot of times have more times, but have more time. And a lot of times you might have time to check things before the animal comes in, but setups and situations can become so dynamic, and you can get caught like hunters do all the time with a bull stepping out. A bull steps out. They step out at 27 yards. They step out at 30 yards. You don't want to reach for a rangefinder. You want to put an arrow on, draw, and shoot that bull. Okay? All right. I want you to shoot, again, I mentioned this before, in full gear, your pack, your gloves, your face mask. You use a decoy on your bow, shoot with that decoy. Another thing for shooting, I want you to, let's see. Oh, okay. I want you to be able to pull, knock, release right after a shot. Okay, so in other words, I want you to shoot, and as soon as you shoot, I want you to pull an arrow, get that arrow knocked, get the release on, and be ready to shoot again, and then shoot a second arrow. How quick can you do that? And how quick can you do that with eyes on the target and using your peripheral when you do that? Because it is a huge mistake that a lot of guys shoot and they are not preparing a second arrow for a follow-up. And that you can have a great shot on a bull. You can have a killing shot on a bull. But it could be a shot that if you can get another one in there, you're going to get a better blood trail and you're going to get that animal to go down sooner. I would much rather a second, unless that animal's standing there and coughing. If that animal's standing there coughing, we know what's getting ready to happen. But if that animal is just standing there with their head down, put a second arrow in it. Because I've seen them where they're like, they're evaluating and reevaluating, and then they'll just slowly start to walk. And they can walk, and they can walk, and they can walk. And if you end up with an arrow in a location that's high and it doesn't get 2 holes and the skin seals around that arrow, you're setting yourself up for a nightmare of a tracking job. So when you shoot an animal, you're absolutely getting another arrow, putting it on, getting yourself ready for a follow-up. Okay? Practice that. Practice it while you're shooting your target. Another thing is I want you to practice long draws. So you're drawing and you're doing 30 seconds of hold and then you're shooting. Okay? 1 minute of hold and then you're shooting. Practice those. I want you to draw, move, walk to the side, move, and then shoot. And just like you're in a situation where you've drawn and that animal has stopped and you need to get a better shooting lane, you're not going to stay where you can't get a shot. If you stay there drawn where you can't get a shot and that animal stands there, he's just going to walk off out of your life. You don't want that. If you have to come to this side to get, you're going to move. You're going to walk to that side, keeping your body in line. You're right there. You're getting assessing that target and acquiring it, and you're releasing. Okay, so draw, move, shoot. Another one I want you to practice is I want you to practice just like when I have my tube. When I wear my tube is on a string that's on my body. So I have times when that animal, I've got my bow up, knocked, and my tube, when I do things like here, when I call, it's hidden by my bow, and I'm watching that animal when I'm trying to throw my voice back behind me. If I see him turn and he's starting to come, I just finger down just like that, and I get inside, get on my string, whether I'm locking in with the release, whether I'm getting my fingers, and I'm ready to shoot. So you want to call, drop the tube quietly, push it down, and then pull, shoot, and hit that target. Okay? Draw. Here's a huge one. Draw, cow call, or grunt. Just like that. Cow call or grunt to stop that animal and then shoot. You have to practice it to make it natural. Okay? Here's another one that a lot of people don't think to do. I want you to have 2 targets. I want you to have one at 10. I want you to have one back there 20, 25, whatever. Draw on that 10-yard target, shoot it. Okay? Next arrow, I want you to draw on that 10-yard target, and then I want you to call, grunt, and then I want you to go to that 20 and shoot it. That 20, 25, 30. And I don't care if you don't know what the distance is. I just want you to be able to draw on 10, cow call or grunt, and then turn to that 20, 25, shoot. Okay? Acquire it, squeeze, shoot. Practice, and what this situation is I have a bull that I've drawn on at 10 yards and he's boogered, and so I cow call or I grunt, okay, that bull, and now I'm staying on that bull and he is going to stop and turn broadside. It could be another 10, 15, or 20 yards out there. So you have to be ready for that to acquire it and then take that second shot. And here's another one. How many of you can shoot without your peep? What happens if something happens to your peep? Are you prepared for that? Have you practiced it? If you haven't, practice it. Okay? All right, y'all. So actually what I did is I covered those first two on there, you and your gear, you and your skill development, and then I'm going to continue on for that, for your knowledge base, for situational prep, and I'll go as far as what I can get in, and each time, each one of these, I'm trying to give you information, but I just don't want to just read everything off for you. I want to cover it in depth. I want you to hear what's in my head. I want you to hear the things that I've gone through or what the thoughts are. Some of them you might agree with, some of them you might not, some of them might be eye-opening for you. That's the goal of it. At any clinic or seminar that I go to, my goal is always to pick up one thing that could help me be successful that year. All right. As a coach, I would go to seminars and workshops every year I had some things that I heard that all they did was really reaffirm stuff that I'm already doing. But if I could pick up just one thing to change and make it more positive for me, that was a win-win. Y'all, that's it for this time, Solo with Coach. I hope you're enjoying the series. If you are, throw me a review on there. I'd appreciate it if you follow us on YouTube. Get some friends to follow us. I'd appreciate it if you give us a review and let us know what you think, and let us know if you appreciate this. You can always throw me an email, especially if you have any questions on any of this, or there's something that I glazed over that you would like to hear a little bit more in depth. Just send me an email at joe@elkbros.com. All right? So, until the next time, keep believing and achieving. Keep dreaming of the screaming. But most of all, y'all, keep grinding. We'll see you next time. God bless.
Where others fear is home to me. No boundaries for my soul. The pounding, the primal blood, driving hunger like no other, running through my veins. No man versus nature, only me versus me. A centuries old challenge, raging deep inside my soul. No anger, malice or evil, only a hunter and his prey. This is my life, country born and raised. When that whistle blows, I'm on the trail, pounding in my head. There's a will, there's a way, there's a way, there's a way. This is my life, I know it's my day, my life. Don't think you know me, my life, no odds will own me, my destiny, my way. Like a ghost unseen, tasting every scent, knowing with every breeze. The trail before me, the fire burning inside me. This is what we live for, honor, passion, and pain. This is my life, grinder born and raised. When that whistle blows, I'm on the trail, pounding in my head. There's a will, there's a way, there's a way, there's a way. This is my life, I know it's my day, whistle blows, I'm on the trail, pounding in my head. There's a will, there's a way, there's a way, there's a way. This is my life, I know it's my day.